Okay, we're studying the Sermon on the Mount, of course, and it is such a great message in so very many ways. And today we're in chapter 6. We'll begin, what is it, verse 19, I think. And we're talking about treasures and where we put our treasures. So I have to begin today with a confession. Uh, and I'm serious about this, a real confession. I've got too much stuff. And that's not to my betterment in lots of ways. The sad part about it is a lot of my stuff that I have seen this weekend moving, I didn't even know I had. Can you imagine? I didn't remember some of these things. So here I am with things that I have put together because I wanted them, because at the time they were important to me, because they're valuable. I don't even use all the time. Preachers have a tendency to put together a library of books. Some of the books I have in my library, I'm confessing now, some of the books I have in my library I've never read. Read a lot of books, but some I've never read. And we've got some CDs that I bought. I'm confessing now. We have some CDs that we bought that still have the plastic around them that they have on them when you purchase them. Can any of y'all relate to me on this? And that's sad in a way, because it says I've probably put my treasure, at times at least in my life, in the wrong place. And I think Jesus is calling on us in our passage today not to do that, to be careful with how we view the things in this world and where we put our treasure, where we put our heart. He says, where your treasure is where your heart is. And he says, don't do that with worldly things. Put your treasure in heavenly things. So we want to read. Let's let Jesus say it. The question, of course, for today is, how do we view the role of material things in our lives? And let me just ask you, do you need some material things? Yeah, you do. You need some material things. You need them for very good and important purposes. You need them to take care of your family. And we're supposed to do that. And Josh, you're going to need some books to take care of your work. What? I'm thinking very seriously about doing some of that. I'm going to have him over and let him look at some of them. And Briar, if your relationship continues, and I would think it might, you're going to need some dishes. Linda's got some dishes that you might like to have for hospitality purposes. I'm so good at embarrassing young people. Anyway, you need some things. And what I've thought of this weekend is maybe what I should have been doing is using them for what I needed them and then passing them along a lot earlier than I have to somebody else that now needs them when I don't need them anymore. There's just so much to think about. And Jeff helped us move lots of furniture yesterday. But while we are moving furniture, I'm thinking all these things about all these things. Stuff. We have too much stuff. And maybe we value the stuff that we have too much, or if not too much, in the wrong way we think of it. So I think that's what Jesus, how do we view the role of material things in our lives? Very important question. It must be important because when Jesus breaks out of the kind of valuable theory of being a Christian and gets to the practical part of it, this is where he goes. And maybe we don't think about that enough in our lives. So he says, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon the earth where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So just think about that as we go along talking about our service to God. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth. Why not? We tend to do it, don't we? We work hard to get this or that or a house or a car or whatever you think you need or want, you see. Why not lay it up? Okay. Yeah, Ian? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, Ian is saying, for those of you that might not hear him, that maybe we should look to heaven and what's there in the same way that the world looks at the things. Is that right? Sort of what you were saying. Yeah, go ahead. Yes. Right. And do you think any of us have that tendency to think too much of the world, the worldly things? You think any of us do? I'm trying to get you to say, I think all of us do in some respects, don't you think? Right. 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 Mm-hmm. Right. Right. That's right. That's right. Moth and rust, what do? They destroy. And what he's talking about is they're destroying something you worked for and wanted and that maybe had your heart, but now it's decayed and gone. We had an old freezer in our garage that we have used for, I don't know how long, maybe 40 years. Thing still runs, but it was very, very rusty. And we decided not to take it. It might even fall apart in transit. So I went over here to Famous Tate, and they had a scratch and dent one, stainless steel, great big thing. It's really nice. That they sold me for about 20% of what it was, what the thing was valued at. I'm not giving you a commercial for Famous Tate, but if you want to look around, you might want to stop by there. We've bought several things there. But when we pulled the old freezer out, it was rusty, it was broken. We didn't even realize it until we saw it. We had really wanted that freezer a long time ago. It was really valuable to us, but now, where was it? Did you ever think that when you take your last breath, nothing material that you possess is yours anymore? Did you ever think of that? Everything's gone from you, and it belongs to somebody else. Even if it's very valuable, like some of Linda's antiques that we moved, they're not hers when she quits breathing. They belong to somebody else. Maybe our children, maybe somebody we don't even know. And maybe the value that Linda puts on something, nobody else wants. I mean, they don't look good with our present furniture or something else, you see. So why do we treasure that so much when there is something eternal, lasting, doesn't rust, doesn't corrupt? We locked the doors when we left the new place last night because somebody could come in there and steal it. A robber could get it. And we locked the doors. Why? So nobody would steal our stuff. Okay. That's something, isn't it? So he says, don't let that happen. Moth and rust do not corrupt in God's realm. Thieves don't break through and steal in God's realm. Number one, because God won't let them. Number two, because they won't even be there because God's not going to have thieves there. Yes, sir, Jeff. Yeah, good thought. Very good thought. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. How do you lay up for other world, for the other world, for heaven? How do you lay up treasures there? Well, Jesus talks about that in some other places too, and the apostles do in the epistles. They speak of how to do this. Jesus instructed the rich young ruler in order to have treasure in heaven. What did he tell him? What? I didn't hear it. Sell what he had and give to the poor. Giving is one way, helping other people with things that they need, maybe even some of the essentials of life. We could give food and shelter, maybe medical help, maybe all kinds of things that are really necessary to living. If we could provide those to some other people, that's one way to lay up treasure in heaven, isn't it? Sell what you have, give it to the poor. Is there anybody here that doesn't have something that we could sell and give to the poor? Or something we want to keep, but the value of it, the money maybe, we could give to the poor instead of buying another one? You think? There's some of that. He talked to the disciples in order to have a treasure in the heavens that do not fail. And that's very important. And Paul wrote Timothy to charge those rich in this present age that they may be storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come, that they may hold on eternal life. We build up our accounts in the bank or with the broker, get our assets all big and healthy, and what? It goes to somebody else when our opportunity to pass it forward has failed, you see. And that's the thing Jesus wants to get to, don't you think, in our passage. He says some things, uses some examples here that are kind of interesting, actually very pointed examples, like this one. He says, the light of the body is the eye. What's that going to lead to, do you think? Maybe what you see is what you want, you think? What you see is what you work for, what you go for. So the light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye be single, the whole body shall be full of light. But if your eye is evil, your whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? What's he talking about? Yeah, the things you look at and how you view them. And the question's going to be, what do we want? And what do we cherish? The light of the body is the eye. If your eye is clear and sound, you're not too plagued with myopia or something else. Healthy, if your vision is sharp and colorful and accurate, then you're going to see properly, aren't you? You'll envision what's out there before you properly. If your eye is unclear or discolored or skewed, your vision may be distorted or it may be dim. You may not see. So we could talk about optometry and things like that for a while, but we don't need to do that. We all understand. Half of us are wearing glasses now. The other half may or may not see fully clearly. Maybe you do. If you do, that's a good thing, isn't it? What can distort your vision? He's not talking about eyeglasses, is he? He's talking about what's in your heart and what you're looking at, what you see, what you treasure, what's beautiful to you. So what in this passage do we see as distorting our vision? In this passage, we're talking, and we have been this morning already, about a false view of material things, that they're the important things, or they're the lasting things. They're not. We get distorted in all that. So a false view of material things can distort our vision. Prejudice can distort our vision. Do you think? Prejudice toward people or certain types of things. Jealousy can distort our vision. Jealousy calls for you to wish something different for those that are in your company. Self-conceit. Do we get some of the things we get so our neighbors will think more of us, maybe? Are we looking to establish our own, the perception of ourselves with other people as more prominent? What are we looking for in life? Anything else you all want to mention? Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I thought myself uh, earlier about 1 John chapter 2, starting at verse 15. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, the pride of life, those go into this whole picture, don't they? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. It really is. And we talk a good game, is what you're saying sometimes, when really in our hearts, it's not as we're saying. I put in the margin of my text here some time back for a sermon I was doing on this subject. And I said in this marginal note, what is valuable to you? What do you have time for? That might say a lot of what's valuable to you. What do you have the money for? Or what are you willing to pay for? And what are you willing to put up with? All of those things enter into the equation of what we're talking about this morning, I think. And we need to be careful in our lives. Yeah, Ed? In itself, mhm. Uh-huh. Good thoughts. Uh-huh. Right. That's what he says. Yeah. Any other? Okay. Yeah, the question is, do we do that? If we're wealthy, we can talk about what we might do with it. But the question is, what do we do? Right, right. Okay. This word single that is used in the Greek text here can be translated generous or liberal if your eye is generous. The word is just used that way in different contexts. And I've given you 2 or 3 passages. You could look at that if you prefer. Evil, of course, is sometimes either translated or meaning grudging or ungenerous. Is that a word? I'm not sure that's even a word, but you know what that means. Not generous, I should have said. And those are interesting thoughts because they get us back to what you do with what you have. And that's where you were going, and Mike here, I think. Got a comment? Uh-huh. Right. That's right. Okay, so we should be generous, shouldn't we? In our judgments of others, in our actions toward others, but in our gifts to others is what we're talking about primarily. But we do need to have proper thinking. Again, we're back to that central question in Jesus' sermon. How are you thinking? What is in your heart? What do you really want? Where are you really headed? What's really important to you? Those kinds of questions are don't they keep surfacing in our Sermon on the Mount study? Seems like every lesson ultimately comes back to that. What's in the side? What's inside? What's going on in your heart? What kind of character are you developing and trying to become more like Jesus in? Those are the questions, I think, that our text is. He says, no man can serve 2 masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. You can't really split your loyalty on these questions. You're either in your heart or not, right? It's either a proper view toward the things of the world or you love them too much. And if you love them too much, you don't love God because God is spirit and he's in the heavenly realm, and that's where you need to be laying up your treasures. Does it make sense? You see what he's saying? This sermon gets to it, doesn't it? We read over it and we think, and we don't maybe insert it into our character so much as we should. This word mammon is a common Aramaic word for riches of different kinds, derived from a Hebrew word which means treasures. So sometimes people ask, what is mammon? And in this context, mammon becomes whatever you think it to be, if you're turned toward the world and the things of the world, do you think? So mammon could have lots of different things associated with it. Yeah. Wealth, riches, money. You can't serve God and money, right? That's the thought, isn't it? Anyone else? Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. That's right. That's right. Notice here, mammon is somewhat personified. It seems to be the opposite of keeping your focus on God. Or maybe it's like a place. Your focus is on the world compared to being on heaven, as it should be. And we're looking in the wrong places in our lives. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Or making some, getting, yeah, yeah. Good comments about keeping a focus. I think much of this is where you put your primary goals to be. You've got to provide certain things. We're back to where we started. You've got to provide certain things for living, for continuing to exist on the earth. You've got to take care of those things. But is that where your direction really is? Yeah, Ray. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is what you were getting at, Levon. I think that's right. Ian? Right. Good thought. Good thought. Yes, sir.
Instead of thinking in 2 weekends, we're going to be talking about Syria or our citizenship is. These are perfect pre-studies to help us begin thinking about that weekend series. Because they're going to come talk to us about where our citizenship is. And we think about this very topic here, and this one even be top of mind. This one even be in the realm of discussion because all the riches of heaven will overcome and overwhelm what we might be doing.
Very good. Very good. So that's a good segue. We mailed Meredith's really nice flyer for our meeting. This morning it went out. I should have attached it yesterday to the bulletin and didn't think of it because we were in the midst of a whole bunch of other stuff going on around us. But sent it out this morning. You can see it. Ed's got a copy back there. You can copy it and distribute it, hand it to your friends. We've got some great young men coming to speak to us 2 weekends from today, isn't it? A week from this coming Friday. So let's remember that and keep it in our minds. All right, we'll move on in the text next week.